Hello everybody, Connor here, and welcome back to another episode of Gaming Retrospective. Whenever I get a new console and start buying games for it, there's always a specific genre of games that attracts my attention. And that's the game compilation. It's a whole variety of games condensed into one package. The first game I ever owned was a game compilation. It was the Sega 6-pack for the Sega Genesis. The 6-pack is a collection of the 6 most popular Genesis games. It was released in 1995 towards the end of the Genesis lifespan. My copy was bundled with the system, which is perfect because it helped me better understand what the Genesis had to offer. It featured the first Sonic the Hedgehog, Golden Axe, Revenge of Shinobi, Streets of Rage, Columns, and Super Hang-On. The only other game I had for the system was Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures, so I usually had this cartridge inside the console. This collection helped start my love for the Sonic the Hedgehog series. This was by far the game I played the most. I dabbled into a lot of Streets of Rage and Columns too, and a fair share of Golden Axe. Super Hang-On and Shinobi were played the least, but that doesn't make them bad games. The only game I really didn't understand was Shinobi, but I think that had to do with me being younger. Sega has had its fair share of compilation games that re-release past games to newer generations, mainly the Sonic games for the Genesis. You have the classics like Sonic Mega Collection, Sonic Gems Collection, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection, Sonic Classic Collection, Sega Genesis Classics, and the newest entry, Sonic Origins. One thing I've noticed throughout the years is that if it's a console that released after the Dreamcast, chances are it has a Sega compilation on it. Sonic Mega Collection is the magnum opus of the 2D Sonic game collections. It released on the GameCube in 2002, and it came with the 7 most popular Sonic games for the Genesis. Sonic 1, 2, 3, Sonic & Knuckles, Sonic Spinball, Sonic 3D Blast, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. There was also 5 unlockable games, 3 of them being Blue Sphere and Knuckles in Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The other 2 games were Flicky and Rystar, which were Sega Genesis games unrelated to Sonic. You can unlock these games by playing through certain titles a set amount of time. I remember getting really excited as a kid whenever I unlocked a new game. The emulation in this collection also holds up pretty well. It feels just like the Genesis versions of the game. You're not missing out on anything playing these over the original versions. This is actually where I experienced the rest of the 2D Sonic games besides Sonic 1 and solidified my love for the series. A few years later, Sega released Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the Xbox, PlayStation 2, and PC in 2004. This was the version I grew up playing. This version added 6 new Game Gear games and added Comic Zone and the Ooze as playable games since they were exclusive in the Japanese version of the game. The gameplay is solid, but what really sells this compilation is the environment the game creates. All of the menus and the music give such a nostalgic vibe. A lot of people praise the original over the Plus version, but since I grew up with Mega Collection Plus, I'm a bit biased. I just felt like the presentation for the menus were a lot better compared to the original. There were so many cool extras in the game like videos, art, and comics. I remember wasting so much time flipping through the different manuals and looking at all the art inside. It was just so cool to have access to these since I didn't grow up with the physical games. They flipped the music for the extras menu and the games menu, and I kinda like this change because I prefer that song a lot more. I remember leaving the console on the game menu and listening to it for hours in the background. Despite Sega releasing a new compilation game for every new console since, I've always felt like none have come close to the magic captured with Sonic Mega Collection. When I heard that the team that created Sonic Mania was working on a new one for current systems, I was really hopeful. Sonic Origins was released on June 23, 2022, and was met with mixed reviews. It features 4 classic Sonic games, Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The games were all updated to support widescreen and other new features. The versions of Sonic 1, 2, and CD were all direct ports of the mobile versions with some new stuff added in, like the drop dash from Sonic Mania. There were also new animated cutscenes done by Tyson Hess added to the games. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was developed from the ground up for this game. For the longest time, the game was in legal limbo due to an insanely popular music artist possibly being involved in the game's soundtrack. The music for some zones ended up being changed and was taken from the PC version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I know some people were upset about this change, but I'd rather them release it with different music than not include it at all. Sonic Origins has two modes, Classic Mode which puts the game in 4x3 and has lives, and Anniversary Mode which puts the game in widescreen mode and changes the lives into coins which can be used to unlock extras. One thing I don't get is why isn't there an option to play with lives in widescreen or vice versa. You might say it's because Classic Mode is supposed to be just like the original Genesis version, but it isn't because it has the drop dash and other features. It just doesn't make sense that you can't have both. It's either you have lives or you have widescreen. The extras consisted of a gallery that had concept art from the games and each game's soundtrack. There was also a set of missions added which I had a lot of fun playing. I enjoy these types of modes because they help freshen up the gameplay, especially for games I've played over and over like these. Sonic Origins Plus released a year later and added new features to the compilation. They added 12 Sonic games from the Game Gear. They also added Knuckles to Sonic CD since he was weirdly absent from the Origins version of the game. Amy was also added as a brand new playable character with a new moveset, which is cool. And the game also got a physical release that came with a reversible cover and an art book. I think Sonic Origins is a solid compilation, but it was just underwhelming to some. It lacks the magic of Mega Collection, but if you only care about playing the games, there's no problem with this collection. It's the best version of these games you're gonna get on consoles. This compilation just lacks the depth the other ones have. There's also a semi-recent game compilation that also lacks depth. Super Mario 3D All-Stars released on the Nintendo Switch for Mario's 35th anniversary on September 18th, 2020. Mario 3D All-Stars is an indirect sequel to Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo, but instead of remastering the first 4 2D Mario games, this was a compilation of high-definition ports of the first 3 3D Mario games: Super Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy. It's obvious by looking at this compilation that these games weren't remastered from the ground up, they're emulated. Some of the choices made for this compilation didn't make much sense. For example, Mario Sunshine and Mario Galaxy were put in 16:9, but for some reason Mario 64 is still in 4:3. There was also a lack of content in this compilation, no extras or alternate modes. Besides the 3 games, the only other thing were the soundtracks for each game being included. Why? It just felt like they added these to make it seem like there were extras, but only having the soundtracks is a bit lame. It just felt like a cop-out. I would have rather had other extras like a commentary of each game's development or unseen concept art. I just don't see the reason someone would boot up this game just to listen to the soundtracks. A bonus CD or a digital download code for the soundtracks would have been a lot cooler. Besides the lack of content, the games play and look great for what they are. The controls for each game were adjusted a bit to compensate for the games using the Switch controllers. Nintendo Switch Online, N64, and GameCube controller support through the GameCube adapter was added later on. Since Mario Galaxy relied on the Wii Remote and Nunchuck, the Joy-Con's gyroscope was used to mimic the pointer, and Mario Spin was remapped to the X and Y buttons, but could still be used by shaking the controller. For playing portably, you're able to use the touchscreen, but I'm not much of a fan of this. It's pretty obvious the game works best on tabletop or TV mode. The gyroscope works great, but you have to recalibrate it a lot. I know a lot of people are sad to see Mario Galaxy 2 was absent from the collection. I could take it or leave it though. It makes sense for these 3 to be included since Galaxy 2 is pretty much similar to Galaxy 1. There was definitely a lot of potential with this release, but if you take it at face value, it's definitely a solid compilation. The game still played great, but as a 35th anniversary title, it could have been much more grand. At the end of the day, I'm just glad these games made it onto the Switch, even if there's not that much content included besides the games. One company that's always releasing compilations is Namco with their Namco Museum series. Namco Museum was first introduced on the PlayStation 1 with Namco Museum Volume 1. An entry has made its way onto almost every console since then, the latest release entry being Namco Museum Archives Volume 2 for Switch, Xbox One, PS4, and PC. The one that holds a special place in my heart is Namco Museum 50th Anniversary for the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. It released on August 30th, 2005 and was an upgraded version of the 2001 Namco Museum. This is where I got my first experience with these classic arcade games. The compilation comes with 16 games, with 2 being unlockable. It came with classics like Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Galaxian, Dig Dug, Rolling Thunder, and Rally X. Pac-Mania and Galaga in 1988 are unlocked by reaching a certain score in other games. I remember putting so much time into Pac-Man and Rolling Thunder. It was a blast being able to play these arcade games without needing credits or actually going to an arcade. There's no extras in this game, but the presentation's really cool. The menu layout is based around a fictional arcade with music from the era being played in the background. I always thought this was a really cool idea for a collection game like this. I've always enjoyed looking at the different arcade machines and thought it was smart to make the locked games have an out of order slip on them. It may not be the best entry in the series due to the lack of extras, but the game lineup is extremely solid and makes for a great time if you're in the mood for some classic Namco games. Xbox has also dipped into the game compilation genre too, with games like Halo the Master Chief Collection. A year after the rocky launch of the Xbox One, Microsoft announced Halo the Master Chief Collection at E3 2014 with a trailer titled Hunter and the Hunted. This trailer recreated a moment from Halo 2. The collection was released in November 2014 and experienced a lot of issues at launch, mainly with matchmaking. Since then, 343 Industries has patched the issues and the games play pretty solidly. The compilation originally consisted of Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, Halo 2 Anniversary, Halo 3, and Halo 4, complete with all extras, maps, and modes. And for my fellow achievement heads, a total of 4,000 gamer score across 400 achievements, making it one of the hardest games to complete. You're also able to toggle between the remastered graphics and the original graphics for Halo 1 and Halo 2, so if you want the true original experience, you're able to with no problems. A bit later on, Halo Reach was added to the compilation, which is a nice bonus. The extras menu gives you access to the live-action series Halo Nightfall and used to give you access to the Halo 5 multiplayer beta, but the beta was removed after the release of Halo 5. This is an extremely solid collection with a lot of content inside. Each game received graphical upgrades and makes replaying the campaigns a lot more enjoyable. The Master Chief Collection is easily the best place to play these games. Overall, game compilations make for solid additions to anybody's game library. It gives access to a variety of games and allows for a new generation to have experience with these titles. Without them, many games would be lost to time. There's just nothing better than having a collection of classic games available on newer hardware, and it allows for these games to be played in the best way possible. Now if you excuse me, I'm gonna go play one of my favorite collection games of all time, Sonic's Games Nobody Remembers Collection.